And joining us now on the debate for the full hour tonight in Vancouver, British Columbia, Taisir Abul Nasser, Dean of the Faculty of Applied Science at the University of British Columbia. And with us here in studio, Mohammed Fadl, Law Professor at the University of Toronto, Kamran Mokhari, Regional Director for the Middle East and South Asia at the intelligence firm Stratfor, Thabit Abdullah, Professor of History at York University, and Mohammed Al-Masri, Professor Emeritus at the University of Waterloo. Good of all of you to join us on what a day this has been. As the President of the United States said, history in the making. Let's start with the news that you all watched, and then I want to get your reaction to it. Michael, roll tape, please.
President Mohammed Hosni Mubarak has decided to step down as President of Egypt and has assigned the Higher Council of the Armed Forces to run the affairs of the country.
Mohammed Al-Masri, you were just there in Egypt. How long ago? A couple of weeks?
I've been here 1 week back, and I witnessed this from the 26th of January to the 3rd of February. This is a very happy day for me and for many Egyptians. If they are watching your show right now, I can tell them Mabruk in Arabic, which means congratulations. I knew then, when I met them in February 1st in Liberation Square, in Tahrir Square, that these people, their victory day will be coming sooner than later. And I was very happy. It is wonderful and just beautiful. I was crying among them for 3-4 hours in Tahrir Square. I took many footage of videos and pictures, and I was almost the only foreign correspondent because the international media did not realize that it's a big event. On January 28, pictures and video from my balcony in the hotel in Qasr Nil Bridge, which is a famous bridge. It's called the Lover Bridge because many couples actually stroll day and night over there if they don't have really enough money to take them to whatever place, 5-star hotel. And so I really enjoy this. It is really a history in the making.
Okay. Where were you, Mohammed Fadl, when you saw the news?
I was in my office. I had just come out of class.
And
I was 2 minutes after the announcement. I couldn't believe I didn't see it live. But, you know, I was expecting this. I woke up in the morning and I heard the statement that the second communique saying that the army was going to support Mubarak's plan to step down in September, and I was surprised. And I said, well, I don't think this is going to last very long. So my only surprise was that they crumbled as quickly as they did, but it was inevitable. Anyone could see the writing on the wall. There were so many people out today. It was clear that the army had no stomach to fight it, and it was just a question of getting Mubarak to, unfortunately, to realize that he had to go, and he could have gotten off on much better terms 2 weeks ago. Today he had to leave the country.
It's interesting, I've heard this expression, why hasn't he been able to see the writing on the wall? And people have used it in an ironic form because, of course, the Egyptians were the first ever people to write on the wall. And yet, for some reason, the former president hasn't been able to read the writing. Okay, Thabit Abdullah, where were you when you saw the news?
I was at home, and I did see this live, just as it was happening. And I want to reiterate and say, Mabruk li kull al-Masriyin. Congratulations to all Egyptians. I'm a little bit jealous since I'm Iraqi.
Wait a minute, what are you jealous about?
The way that it took place. It took place very organically. It was a real people's movement.
As opposed to an invading army doing it.
It was an invasion with all the problems that come along with that, which Iraq is still working through. Undoubtedly, Egypt is going to go through a very tumultuous period. I mean, everybody knows that the really hard part now begins. And everybody, this is not something that was hidden from anybody, even at Tahrir Square during the height of it. They knew that after Mubarak would leave, then the really hard part would start. But still, what has been accomplished is absolutely phenomenal, and it's made all Arabs extremely, extremely proud.
Kamran, where were you when you saw the news?
I was writing a very long piece on the Egyptian state, and I got a call from one of my colleagues that, can you come on email? Mubarak just threw in the towel. And I said, well, about time, because we thought it would happen yesterday. It didn't. In fact, if you remember, back on the 28th, we were discussing the same thing. We thought that it would happen on the 28th, but you know, it finally happened, and like Thabit says, you know, the easy part is over. Now comes the hard part.
I have purposely left our guest in Vancouver for last because, Taisir, you were on our program, and exactly 24 hours ago, you said this. Roll tape.
Absolute devastation. I was just listening to the first few sentences, and it didn't look like an introduction to him stepping down, and I figured, okay, maybe he's just setting up the stage and it's a graceful exit, but by the end of it, it was disappointment, devastation, and in many ways, to be honest, anger.
Okay, that was 24 hours ago when you found out that Mr. Mubarak was not stepping down. Today he did. Contrast your emotions tonight, if you would.
Oh, I was screaming. I had went to bed that night and I wasn't really sure of what to expect when you wake up in the morning. Are they going to be back in Tahrir Square? Is it going to be bloody? And then when I got up in the morning, first thing I did is I turned my computer on to listen to the live coverage from there, and I called my family over there. And just as I was speaking to my brother, he said, he's stepping down, and I started screaming, and we hung up, and each one of us was screaming from a different kind, different side of the world. It was just absolutely incredible. And to add to what your guests were saying, it's not just that the Egyptians have managed to take the Obama slogan of yes we can and actually turn it into yes we did effectively, but it's not just about Egypt or the Arab world. I think what I really find from a perspective of Canadians that is truly beautiful in this is that everybody was cheering for Egypt. It was like it was this gigantic soccer game, and somehow around the world people were cheering for Egypt. And when I came into the office this morning, people in the office who have no connections to Egypt whatsoever were hugging me and kissing me, and I was getting email. My 6-year-old daughter was watching it on television, and she was just saying happy birthday to Egypt, and everybody was excited. And to me that was really good, that it was no longer us and them. The Arabs were no longer treated by a different standard. People were excited because of the principle, and that's a huge, huge achievement.
Well, I suspect we've all seen these pictures on television today, but you know what? It's an historic day, so let's see them again. Michael, if you would, from Egypt, roll tape. Okay, Mohammed Al-Masri, I recognize Allahu Akbar, God is great, but what were the other chants they were saying at the beginning? Did you catch them?
I mean, I heard many slogans. Most important, they want to get rid of the regime. It is started actually by 3 requests. One of them is change, second one is liberty, and the third one is social justice. This is how it started the 25th of January. It was not in their agenda to get rid of Mubarak at that point. The second request is to get rid of the Minister of Interior, the one who really responsible for the police attacking the protester. When I saw it on the 28th, I saw really a protest which turned into a revolution, with the full definition of a revolution. And by the way, for our Canadians to know that this is not an Islamic revolution. This is an Egyptian revolution. They did not actually burn US flags. They were very peaceful. They know exactly what they want. They were really mature politically, and there was an excellent cross-section of Egyptians. There was Christians, Muslims, a woman with hijab, woman with niqab, woman with no head cover, with babies, with families. It was just amazing scene and took everybody by surprise.
Mohammed,
not the regime, but everybody, including the analysts that they knew or were supposed to know Middle East.
Mohammed Fadl, when you see those pictures, what comes to mind?
Just sheer euphoria. I mean, it's something that I experienced as well in my own personal way. I think for a lot of Egyptians, and you could see this, you could hear this, I watched Al Jazeera Arabic all day. And the amount of joy and hope and pride that was reflected by every single commentator, whether Egyptian or non-Egyptian, was just overwhelming, overwhelming. I mean, from time to time I would get tears in my eyes just out of sheer joy and happiness. at this. And so everybody has a lot of hope. Everybody has a lot of hope because of the maturity of the movement.
Are you surprised at your reaction given that, I mean, you were 3 years old when you left Egypt?
Well, sure, but Egyptian immigrants still have very tight community, right? Growing up, we would socialize with other Egyptians, etc. We would go visit from time to time. So I still have a lot of strong ties, and I knew what it meant for these people, right? Because I knew how long they had lived without hope of change, and right, to see them to have this kind of happiness is really, it's amazing if you know anything about the Egyptians and have lived with them. And not just for Egyptians, I think for Arabs especially, this was an incredibly joyous day. People talk about it as a resurrection, literally in those kinds of in those kinds of words, and that this is a new century and a new beginning. People are calling it the White Revolution because it's a new page, right? A revolution free of turning back, no desire for revenge, a desire that unifying everybody, just rebuild the country, rebuild a new future for everybody. And so I think there's incredible hope here. It's a great story, and everybody, like I said before, should embrace it and sing it.
Let's see if we know what to call it, because we're all calling it a revolution. Kamran, is this a revolution that we've seen happen?
Not in the classic sense of the word. Revolution, as it is generally understood, is a change that basically takes away the old order. Like we saw in the Iranian Revolution, the Shah, the edifice of the state that the Shah had built.
Actually, can I jump in for a second? That we saw in the Iranian Revolution in 1979 on this date. Apparently, February 11, 1979, the people took over.
Yeah.
This was the date it happened. This is a date that's going to live in history for two reasons. Anyway, you don't think this is a revolution in the same way?
No, because the old order is still there. The old order is not Mubarak, it was not Sadat, and it was not Nasser. It was the military establishment, the military-dominated state. Parties come and go. NDP ran the show for a while. It succeeded the Arab Socialist Union, and before the Arab Socialist Union, you had other vehicles. So in other words, people come and go, parties come and go, but that order is still there. Now, it may change, but it didn't come down, in one basically single bound. And therefore, whatever's going to happen moving forward, and it's really unclear what will happen, will evolve over time.
Yeah, we're going to follow up on that and what will come next. But before we do that, our producer, Daniel Kitts, was sent Daniel, this is a Facebook message, right, that you got from, okay, I won't say the person's name, but she's Iranian. And let me just read a small snippet of this. It says, yes, Iranians are looking with awe and a sense of sadness at what's happening today. Why not us? Why didn't we get our freedom when we have sacrificed for 32 years? Those are some of the comments that I hear from my friends. David, you were expressing kind of some angst as well earlier about the fact that it didn't happen for Iraq in the same way.
Yeah, but
understand this view then.
I'm a little bit closer to this, not just because I've lived in Egypt, but this does have an Arab dimension to it. And I think all Arabs, even those who have never lived in Egypt, feel strongly connected with this and share in this incredible euphoria. I mean, the feelings that Muhammad was expressing in terms of having tears in his eyes and goosebumps, my wife and I, had these feelings. We were going back and forth, barely able to contain our emotions as we were seeing these events unfold. Not just because we live there and we have friends there, but because this has a very strong Arab dimension to it. I mentioned this to you in the previous program we had. That don't forget that this started in Tunisia, and then immediately it is caught on in Egypt, and then all over the Arab world tonight, there have been celebrations from Morocco and Algeria, in the Palestinian territories, in Yemen, in Iraq. There have been massive demonstrations in support of what's going on in Egypt, all around the Egyptian embassies. In some places, like in Syria, unfortunately, the people started assembling in front of the Egyptian embassy, and then the secret police sort of dispersed them. It's a great shame, actually, for a country like Syria to do something like this. In places like Saudi Arabia, they've even come up with some of the most innovative techniques of virtual demonstrations. I've heard that they've been able to do this on the computer, where 150,000 Saudis participated in virtual demonstrations. This has really touched a nerve all over the Arab world, and it's very much part of the Arab experience now.
Taisir, I want to find out a little more. I want to follow up on that answer you gave earlier and find out about the nerve that it's touched with you, because one of the reactions that I had not heard until you said it just a few moments ago, we tend to think of Canada as a pretty egalitarian place. We tend to think of it as a place that is, say, less racist than other places on earth. And yet, I thought you were very honest to share this view of yours that somehow an Arabic Canadian today doesn't have to hang his or her head in as much shame as he or she may have had to do previous to this, because this is a great day for Arabs everywhere. Can you expand on that a bit?
I would just correct the way you refer to it, because I don't think Arab Canadians would agree with you that they were hanging their heads in shame.
Well, the notion that you couldn't handle democracy like the rest of the world could, something like that.
Well, yeah, the accusations or the allegations that you couldn't, and to me that was one of the most deeply hurtful comments that were made in the beginning, that, and I mentioned it to you last time I was on the show, that Arabs are not ready for democracy. That to me is an incredibly deeply racist, and I will say that, a racist statement, because it assumes that the rights that we have for ourselves over here are not rights that all human beings have. These are luxuries. We can have them, but you're not good enough to be able to deal with them. So you need a strong man. You need someone to oppress you. Otherwise, you'll misbehave. That's the general assumption that was there. And for me to be able, like the other guest was saying, it's not someone who came in to impose democracy on us. It is not someone who came in to teach us democracy. These are just the regular average people who went out and said, no, this is enough. You guys on the outside have been propping this man for such a long time. Tell us we can't handle ourselves. I am telling you we can handle ourselves, and we have proven it for 17 days, 20 days, whatever the number of days was. We have proven that we actually can handle ourselves in the most stressful situations with the highest levels of dignity. And I think the fact that this was such a popular, uncoordinated uprising without any clear label that anybody can put on it. People tried to put on it, oh, is this the Muslim Brotherhood? Is this? And there was no way you can fit it in one label. And the Egyptians somehow managed to persist with this incredible level of discipline with the masses, and they won over the hearts of the people. And how can you not support someone who is that persistent and that peaceful in asking for what they want? I mean, everybody turned around. I mean, people who in the beginning were skeptical, even Israel in the beginning, the comment that was made, and they turned around and they said, well, we can't really say that people can't have the democratic rights. So for me, that was a huge achievement to get people to look at others outside the world, being Egyptians or any other country outside of the Western world, and say, well, these are people like us. They have dreams like us. They have aspirations like us. And when they ask for the things that we berate them for a very long time and say, why don't you have democracy? When they actually stand up and say, we want it and we're prepared to sacrifice for it, the only thing we can do is at least cheer them on. And that's what happened.
I just want to comment, Steve, that this, which I still call it pro-democracy revolution, maybe it's not a textbook definition in academic circles, but it is a revolution. This means that a huge change, a quantum step, has not started 18 days ago. This must be clarified to your audience. This is started 5, 6, 7 years ago, where political parties start coming to stage saying that no, kifaya means enough is enough for the Mubarak and his son to continue, because they were grooming his son to be president. And many people went to jail, many people being killed and tortured. So this is a continuation of a long, long process. Yes, Tunisia maybe give an example, but also remember the scale. Egypt is 80 million people, and it started across Egypt, including the capital, where in the case of Tunisia, started outside the capital and moved to the capital. So it's a big difference between the two. So you have to give credit really to the opposition parties who started talking and speaking that we want more democracy. We don't want really to be, from Mubarak the father to Mubarak the son, and they oppose Mubarak the wife. So this is a continuation of a process, and you get to the climax of it 18 days ago, And I have to give credit to the Facebook generation who really organized. Remember, in Egypt, there is a law that 5 of us like that cannot be, we cannot be in a cafe, we cannot be in your house to organize. We can talk whatever you want.
Well, here's what I want to figure out.
But you can't organize.
I want to call upon your knowledge of how things go on behind the scenes to get you to, and admittedly, nobody knows, but let's see if we can figure this out a little bit better anyway. Yesterday, everybody thought Mubarak was going to step down. And he went to the microphones, and he didn't. And then today he did. Now, presumably, something wasn't in place yesterday that I guess a lot of people thought would have been, that would have allowed him to leave, that was in place today, that did allow him to leave. What happened?
Yesterday, the military gave him one final chance. Mind you that the military does not want to disgrace Mubarak. Look, today they said, you know, we're thankful for what he did for the country, and they tried to make it as graceful as possible, though, you know, it was very clear that this wasn't an honorable exit. But yesterday they gave him one final chance that, okay, if you can do your song and dance, maybe people will, you know, calm down, maybe we'll get a respite of a few days. If not, then we're going to have to ask you to leave. That was the back and forth. So yesterday, obviously, this is not a perfect, you know, script that you can actually manage from behind the scenes. But when things like this happen, there's a lot of commotion. So it comes out as very confusing. But there was a game plan, and the game plan was executed today when, at the end of yesterday, and after Suleiman came over and said, you know, I'm assuming the presidential powers, people were still there, and the intelligence services told them that we're going to see the similar crowd tomorrow. And when that happened, the army had no choice but to say, okay, you know, we're not going to open fire on these people. You're going to have to go for the, you know, the good of the many, you know, outweighs the good of the one or the few.
Mm-hmm. So, Mohammed Fadl, who's running the country right now?
Well, right now, basically, there's been a suspension of the Constitution, as far as I can tell. The Supreme Military Council is in charge, and they're supervising a transition period. So we have to wait and see what happens during this period. But from their statements so far, there's nothing that suggests that they want to retain power, nor do I expect them to want to, because I don't think it would be in their interests to maintain power.
But Suleiman's still the guy, I mean, ostensibly.
No, Suleiman is out.
No, he's out too.
He's out.
I'm hearing that they're not completely chucking him yet. They're keeping him.
Well, what I'm saying is he is not in charge of the.
Oh, absolutely.
The Supreme Military Command is in charge of the government right now, not Suleiman as vice president.
Although he made the announcement that Mubarak was leaving.
That's right, but he did not make it as pursuant to the delegated powers received from Mubarak yesterday. He made the announcement on behalf of the Supreme Military Command.
Absolutely.
Okay, but Taisir, I presume people, well, you tell me. I mean, do Egyptians want to know a name? Do they want the name of a person who's actually making decisions right now? Or are they content to have this sort of military council make the decisions until that gets figured out?
I mean, I wouldn't have any way of knowing what Egyptians in general would want, but to be honest, I don't think anybody is going to shed a tear over Omar Suleiman, for example. I mean, he certainly didn't have the record to make people love him, but people were willing to take something instead of Mubarak. And I agree with what was just said, that when Suleiman said it, he said that the army has taken, or the president has asked the army to take over, and he wasn't part of the game. And basically, he was acknowledging that the army now is running the show. So I don't know if it really matters that there is one particular human being, because what the Egyptians want is the elections, where you get that human being. In the transition, I would presume that there would be a whole lot more trust within having the army take over, as opposed to having one human being, because it's going to invariably end up being one of the Mubarak gang that was there. I mean, you can't just grab somebody from the outside and put them in now.
I have a scenario, actually. Educated guess, you can record it and you can actually play it in a few weeks from now. I think the army will actually appoint a council to run the country, which has military and civilian. And they will actually not have direct control of the country, because this will be look like it's a military coup, and they don't want to look like that. And this will satisfy the people in Tahrir Square and other parts. They will actually change the government, might keep the prime minister, but again, the government will change. So, and this will be a transitional period for, say, 6 months, with fixed dates for a new constitution to have, and also for a free election for the parliament and upper house.
So the election that was planned to happen this fall still goes ahead anyway.
It will go, but under a new constitution, and also the emergency. Remember, the emergency law
Is it
does
still in
not
place?
allow. Right now, it is still in place. So they will wipe that out. They will get rid of all the regime, if you like, with all the tools that they used to have, and then have a clean start.
Okay, Thabit, you wanted to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment concerning Kamran's earlier observation that this is not a classic revolution and so forth. I think, there are many ways to define a revolution, but this from the beginning was a very cautious conservative revolution. The demands of the protesters were not very radical. This was essentially targeting crony capitalism, in which corruption can proliferate, and this is really the main target of change, to try and eliminate corruption through the intermarriage of these nouveau riche elements with certain elements of the Mubarak family and his entourage. I think that the military, I don't believe that Egypt is essentially a military state. I think this is the way that it was in 1952. But throughout the 80s in particular, the military was being squeezed out, and the secret police was beginning to take more and more of an active role as the fundamental base of support for this regime. This, again, is what this revolution targets. So if they can achieve this, if the secret police no longer is the main pillar that upholds the regime, if, on the other hand, crony capitalism can really be cut down to size, then the notion of liberty, of the establishment of democracy, again, I don't think anybody in Tahrir Square has any illusions that they're going to overnight build something that is similar to the most advanced capitalist or the most advanced democracies in the West.
But they have a chance now.
I think what they're looking at is something that will approach the democracy that exists in Brazil or in Turkey, or perhaps even in India, which would be a major accomplishment. This is the target of this revolution, and I think it does merit this kind of a title with the footnote that it is not really a major radical revolution, but very consciously a conservative revolution.
Kamran.
Fair enough. I wouldn't disagree with that qualifier. I just wanted to address 2 points. That first of all, crony capitalism is not just something that Mubarak is doing.
That's true.
The military is doing it too. The military, for the longest time, owns large corporations. They're in all sectors of economic and financial life.
And that's not about to end.
That's not about to end. The military ultimately is the power, because at the end of the day, those who wanted the regime to stay were leaning on the military. Those who wanted the regime to go, or the government to go, were leaning on the military.
What about that fellow who's had his picture on the front page of the paper, the richest man in Egypt? What did he want?
He has his economic interest to uphold. So he's watching which way the wind is blowing, and he's a smart guy. So he's going to say, okay, I'll be with Mubarak so long as he's winning. But if he's on his way out of the door, I don't want to go out with him. So I'm going to maintain my interest. So at the end of the day, of course, this is not a military dictatorship, but it is a military-dominated regime, and the secret police is something, it goes back to what Muhammad was saying. The military can't govern. Governing is a huge task. It took thousands of officers under Nasser to fill in all the ministries and create that new state. This military, the current generation, doesn't have a stomach for that.
I just want to add that there is a paradigm shift after the 25th of January. Your analysis is okay before the 25th of January.
How is it different right now?
Different because now you're bringing accountability, and people will not go off the street. Not yet. I mean, it's only 10 days. Come on, give me a break.
But then there's no paradigm shift then.
No. And you're thinking as an analyst is based on the facts and the feelings and the pulse of the pre-25th January. So everybody got by surprise, including analysts like you, that these people can actually bring peaceful
Nobody's disagreeing with that. But
Egyptian
what I'm asking
revolution with accountability, with pro-democracy. And remember, the strength of this revolution is actually, it does not have a single leadership.
Okay,
it's
let him respond, please.
I'm not disagreeing with any of that. All I'm saying is that the order is still there. That order is not gone because the people who wanted Mubarak to go were dependent on that order to push Mubarak out. That only privileges and empowers that order. Mohammed, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think two things. First, I think the order is radically shifted because now the crony capitalists that were close to Mubarak and their secret police are out of the picture. So now what you have left is civil society and the army. I have no doubt that the army is going to continue to be a major player in Egyptian society. But what's going to happen in the new iteration of the Egyptian Republic is that the civilian sector is going to become much stronger, right? And the army is not going to be opposed to that because the reality is once the burden of the police state and the corruption of the crony capitalism is lifted on Egyptian civil society, you are going to see an unbelievable economic and cultural renaissance that is going to benefit the army too in its role as capitalist. Now, one thing that I would disagree with is, yes, the army is heavily involved in the Egyptian economy, and that's ultimately why I thought they were going to side with the revolution, because they, putting down mass uprising would be bad for business. But their business interests, I think, were fundamentally different from the crony capitalists around Mubarak.
Yeah,
they actually have a much more
on.
tangible interest in seeing stability and economic growth, right? Real economic growth investment in the economy than maybe the crony capitalists of Mubarak. So I expect actually that the military will continue to play a very important role in the economy, still have important privileges, but the difference is going to be you're going to have a much more dynamic and vibrant, growing civilian economy so that in 20 or 30 years, we can actually expect to have full civilian control of the government. Not tomorrow, but in 20 or 30 years.
Let me get Taisir on this as well, okay? Taisir, come on in here if you would.
I was just going to jump in on the army part because as far as I am aware, at least, the engagement of the army in the Egyptian economy and in the society at large is not the same thing as Ala Mubarak's son, for example, engagement in it. When the army sets up things, it is setting it up for the soldiers and the police and the officers and so on in it who are part of the people. So, of course, the top people, I'm sure, are getting generous benefits from being in the army, but so is everybody in the army, and all the other people are amongst the lowest people in there. So when the army builds apartments for its people, it's not regarded as badly as other sectors when you get one person amassing riches in there. So I'm not really sure that there is resentment against the army's engagement in some of those things as much as you would have the resentment when you see the excessive corruption on the side of some of the very high-profile members of the Mubarak family, for example. So there is a bit of a difference. When we're talking about the revolution versus whatever else it could be, I think the part that makes this very special for most Egyptians is the sense of pride, and even for all Arabs, is the sense of pride that came. Nasser, with all his faults, gave Egyptians pride. And I remember when I was a kid, you'd say, stand up and lift your head up high, you're a proud Egyptian. Sadat, with all his faults, again, gave them some hope, whether it was realized or not, gave people hope that there will be peace and there is economic change and all of that. Mubarak effectively gave them shame. And the shame is a big thing in the Arab culture. And for people now to be able to say the world is watching us, we actually did what everybody said can't be done. It's this element of pride. And somebody was saying on Al Jazeera this morning that my parent, like this was a young man, and he was saying, my parents talked about an Egypt that I never knew. And now I'm going to get to see the Egypt that they described from years past. So there is this sense of we're going to make this happen. And I think the trick for the future is if the young people and the same people that were in the Tahrir Square, if they continue to be engaged and they continue to put whoever is in power on watch, you work for us. And if you actually are not going to do what we want you to do, you know what? We'll be out here again and we'll get you out. I think if we can manage to sustain that level of engagement, then there will be the accountability and there will be a change for the better later on.
One of the things that gave me, that showed me how hopeful this revolution is, and I insist actually on calling it a revolution. If you just go on YouTube and you watch the videos that Egyptians prepared during the midst of this revolution, you already see the cultural fruits being reaped, right? There's already been this fluorescence of cultural and artistic activity. And I'm certain, again, you're going to see an incredible blossoming of Egyptian talent in all sectors of society and the economy. And I mean, I try to check my euphoria against objective statistics. And as a former securities lawyer, right, I always follow Bloomberg. So what happened today after Mubarak announced that he was gone? Everything went positive for the Egyptian economy. Credit default swaps went down. The price of the Egyptian ETF went up. So everybody is bullish on this revolution. I always check at the market.
Well,
if the market reaction is positive, then that's an objective check.
I don't want to put you through a cold shower now or anything like that, but or rain on your parade or whatever the right expression is. But let me ask a two-word question. What now? Now, we've been talking around this table, literally and metaphorically, in the case of Taisir, for a few days now. And when we've asked this question in the past, everybody's always said, well, we got to get rid of Mubarak first, and then once we get rid of Mubarak, we can worry about what then. So, okay, Mohammed Al-Masri, Mubarak's gone. What now?
Now will be a committee to draft a new constitution. It will be a new government. It will be less corruption.
Are you so sure?
I agree about the stock market going up on Sunday.
Okay. Are you so sure that it's going to be a liberal democratic government?
I'm sure, 100%. Why I'm so sure? Because I was there with these people. If I did not go there and I had the pulse of these people and I sat in my comfortable chair in Waterloo, and do the analysis, I'll come up with any conclusion. But I'm telling you, it's 100%, I'm 100% sure because I met these people, their determination, and they know exactly what they want.
Cameron.
Huge difference between what you want and what you can actually achieve. I am respectful and, I appreciate all the sentiment and I share with it because, Egypt is part of the extended world that I come from. But in that part of the world, there's been all sorts of false hopes risen and, they fall. The problem moving forward is we have a very divided spectrum. There is the military, there is the Brotherhood, which is the largest political force organized. Yes, the Muslim Brotherhood. There are other smaller political groups. There are civil society groups. For all of these people to come together and agree on a path, achieve a consensus, is going to take time. There's going to be setbacks. The military is going to play people off.
What does that mean?
Well, that means is that the military wants to be able to oversee this process and not allow itself to completely lose control of it. Eventually it will, and I agree with Mohammed, 25 years.
This is exactly the analysis of pre-25th of January.
So what has changed?
This is the analysis, I'm just telling you.
No, but let me finish here.
This is what it changed,
let me finish.
The spirit of the January 25th.
We can't do this. One at a time, please.
Let me finish here. What I'm trying to say here is, look, there's no straight line from where we are to where we want to be. And there's going to be a lot of back and forth. There are objective realities that determine what the outcome will be. Those objective realities are as I laid them out. Now, for those people to get together and agree on things, a lot of times, there are in many countries, we have cases where the first unrest broke out, 10, 15 years earlier, and it took 10, 15, 20 years to achieve democracy. In some cases, it doesn't get to that point because the civilians cannot agree on some sort of a social contract, if you will, or the rules of the game. For the military, that's just perfect. You know what? Because these guys are not getting along. We're the only organized institution, national institution. Everybody respects us. We're going to stay on top. I'm just looking at it in a really cold and pragmatic, brutal way.
Okay, let me get Taisir to come in on this as well. What is your hope as to what comes now?
No, I'm glad you're asking my hope because I don't know what will come. I can tell you what I hope will come. I am hoping that the same spirit that was in the Tahrir Square, that as Dr. Al-Masri was saying, that brought together the women with the niqab, with the women with the full makeup in there, the Muslim with the Christian, the old with the young, that I'm hoping that the people do not disengage My biggest hope is that they continue to be engaged, and it's not like, okay, we've done what we needed to do, let's go back to business. That they continue to hold the leaders accountable. And one of the things that, to me at least, was quite significant is that the national newspaper, which was always the mouthpiece of the government, actually changed a few days before Mubarak stepped down, and they started reporting on what is going on the way it was going on. And that's, it's almost like people who have been part of the regime for so long, they woke up, they too got caught up into it. And my hope is that we look to the future, that people don't go for revenge in the past, that they continue looking to the future, and that they continue working together and holding their leaders accountable. Well, I really hope that the rest of the world would help, in the sense of Egyptians who actually have expertise in governance and so on outside, unlike myself from a completely different background, the people who actually know what needs to be done in these things. I'm sure many of them will be heading back over there to try and do whatever they can to help. But it's more the vigilance of the people that I'm hoping does not get lost in the exercise.
You mentioned the word revenge, and I want to go to Mohammed Fadel on that, because you've told us on this program in the past, if you were in charge, you'd be bringing Mubarak up on charges, and you'd be putting him through the ringer.
That's not revenge, right?
Well, that's not necessarily moving forward either.
But what I said specifically was that what Egypt needs is something like a Truth and Reconciliation Committee for South Africa, particularly because we have this problem. We are going to have a legacy of a massive secret police. You have to have some way of dealing with them, right? Yeah. So that, as a minimum, they're not there as a sort of potential sabotage, right? I think it would the Truth and Reconciliation Commission would be a very good model for Egypt to adopt, to reintegrate them and rehabilitate them, right? And get them to confront the evil that they did. I think it's very important. And I think that the new Egypt should be totally prepared to forgive everything that's passed on that model. You come forward, you confess what you did, and then you say you're ready for a new life.
Thabit, what's your concern about what may come next?
Well, one thing that gives me a little bit of hope is that there were two main pillars of power in Egypt, the military and the secret police. The military has established some sort of an alliance with the popular movement, and it will continue to do so. And thus, I'm not too concerned about the military trying to hog up power and suppress the popular movement, because it still needs it in cutting down to size the secret police and the security establishment, which has become extremely humiliating for the military over time. But in saying so, I don't believe that this is going to lead to some great utopia in Egypt. I think that I'm heartened by the fact that Mubarak left before it was really too late. I thought that the longer he drags this out, the more the radical, demagogic, fascistic elements will really begin to take leadership of the popular movement. This did not happen, so I'm heartened by this. And I think that essentially what this revolution is that it is a liberal bourgeois revolution, if you will, a revolution that wants a more clean capitalism. It wants a capitalism that is as free of corruption as is possible. If it can achieve some step in this direction, and I believe it will, then I think it will be a great success. Okay. I don't measure the success in terms of a radical overhaul of the system, nor do I measure it in terms of a full-fledged liberal democracy. It is a struggle. It's a long-term struggle. It will take 20 years. I agree with what Kamran has said, but this is a positive step in that direction, for sure.
Let me remind our viewers that of our 5 guests on the program tonight, 3 are of Egyptian descent. Taisir in British Columbia, and our 2 Mohammeds here on the right. And I just got an email from somebody, and I think this is a good question to ask, so I'm going to pass it along. Please ask your panelists if they themselves will now be returning to Egypt, even for the short term, to ensure a smooth transition. I ask this because I truly applaud the people of Egypt for their courage in removing this person, Mubarak, but with so many of the highly educated Egyptians spread around the world, should they not help? Should they not return to help and ensure that no power vacuum occurs? Okay, we've got three highly intelligent Egyptian academics here.
And I want to take a crack
I'm already
at that
booked
too.
my tickets. I'm going there in middle of March, but not to help them transition. I'm chairing a conference, technical conference, but I will be there in order to monitor the revolution and report back to you when I come back.
Okay, Mohammed, go ahead.
I want to go to salute the Egyptian people, not to teach them anything. They have a very deep bench. If they want to help, if they want my help, they know how to find me. But I don't. I would never be so presumptuous.
What do you mean they know how to find you?
Of course they know how to find me. There's Google, right? But I'm serious here. I'm totally serious.
Do you have any plans to go back at the moment?
Well, I'll go in the spring. I'm going to go in the spring once I finish teaching. But to go to salute, not to impose myself as somebody who knows what's best for them. Because I say this with all seriousness and all humility. They taught us, we have nothing to teach them. They have so much talent there, and it's now going to come to the fore for the world to see. And one thing that's going to make this transition, I think, relatively easy, it's the positive side of the horrific governance of the Mubarak regime. It's hard to do worse than the Mubarak regime. So any kind of new regime is going to be doing better.
Okay, let me ask Taisir. Any plans to return?
I wish I had a talent that would be of value over there. I'm an engineer, and Egypt is full of extremely talented engineers. But no, if there is ever something I can do, I would very, very seriously consider it. I don't believe I have something to offer in the sense of going over there, very much like Mohammed was saying, that I don't think they need me over there. What I'm hoping to be able to do is to do something from over here, where to see if we can get Egyptians across Canada to start thinking of what possibly we could do to bring some expertise of any kind that they might need, even if it's a question of organizing open discussions about how do you structure governance in countries and organizing conferences and things like that. I don't really know what I can do to help, to be honest, but it's a very, very serious question that all Egyptians are asking themselves. But as Mohammed was saying, you're not talking about a country that doesn't have an educated population there. You have a country that has an extremely highly educated population and an incredibly innovative population, because they've had to do with so little for so long. They're actually amazingly innovative in many ways. So the question is, what is it that they need that can be provided by the world outside? And it's not just let's go in and dig some trenches over there. What they'll need will be probably much more subtle than that, and the trick would be for us over here to try and organize in a way to find out what is it that they need and provide it when it is asked for.
Taisir, I'm not normally so presumptuous as to think I can speak on behalf of all of our viewers, but I'll go out on a limb this time. Our Egyptian guests over the past couple of weeks that we've had on this program have done a terrific job analyzing, explaining, and sharing their views and their emotions with us on what's been going on. And I think that's been extremely helpful to, I know, our audience, and so we're grateful for that. Anyway, Thabit, you wanted to ask, or you wanted to add, I should say.
Well, the Egyptians have a saying that whoever drinks from the river Nile will forever be enchanted and attached to the country. And my wife and I lived for 4 wonderful years in Egypt, and we've been enchanted with it. So when this revolution was taking place, I had to pull out all the stops to hold my wife back from actually packing up and leaving right now. But it would be a wonderful honor and a real privilege to go back.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left here. Let's go around the table, literal and metaphorical, very quickly and see, how do you think the reverberations of this will be felt in the wider Arab world? Kamran.
Clearly, it's put the regimes in a dilemma, from the Saudis to the Yemeni to Bahrain to Jordan, Syria, Morocco, Algeria, and I'd go even beyond the Arab world. I think that the Iranians are feeling nervous. I think that Pakistan is feeling nervous as well.
I'm going to stop there. I want to make sure we get everybody in. Thabit, what do you say?
I agree. I think that it's shaking things up for the better. Throughout the Arab world, the demands have now shifted from the struggle of sectarianism and using radical religious language to secular demands that are more realizable, that are more progressive. This is exactly what I'm seeing right now in Iraq. The demonstrations are all very practical ones.
Okay, I've got to cut you off because I've got to save time for everybody. Taisir, your view.
I think the biggest thing would be it pulled out the carpet from under the people who say that there is nothing can be achieved except through violence. So you've just changed the whole dynamic. You've proven to people that you do have hope of achieving something through peaceful means. So the whole Al-Qaeda, it's the tremors would be heard within the Al-Qaeda region. They are not going to be able to recruit as well they were recruiting before.
Okay, we haven't heard that angle before. That's interesting. Mohammed Fadl.
I'll just say what the banner on Al Jazeera Arabic today was. Celebrations encompassing the entire Arab world from the Atlantic Ocean to the Persian Gulf. And so Arabism is alive and well, and with a democratic Egypt, it will prosper, God willing.
Fill that out a little further. What do you mean by that exactly?
What I mean by that is Arabs' connection to Arabism has always been there. I remember going to Morocco in 2002. I was visiting a family there, and the first thing they told me was, why can't we have unity like the Europeans have unity? We have the same language, same religion, we don't have a history of conflict. Well, what we're missing was democracy. Once the Arabs get democracy, the dreams of Arab nationalism will be achieved.
Okay, Mohammed Al-Masri, you get the last word tonight.
I think change will come to the Arab world, and tomorrow there's a call for 1 million protesters in Yemen. So watch for Yemen next time, and might take. So Yemen is already ripe for an Egyptian-like revolution. And I hope for Egypt to be like Turkey. In the last 6-7 years, we've found that it does not take 20 years for democratic change, and Turkey is a good example for Egypt to follow.
Meaning a secular democracy.
It's a secular democracy where everybody is equally treated, where there's less corruption, and a better economy, better education, better public health service.
I want to thank all of our guests for joining us tonight on what will no doubt be an unforgettable day for all of us. Taisir Abul Nasser, we're so grateful that you could be available to us again on the line from Vancouver, British Columbia. Thank you so much. And back here in our studios, Kamran Bokhari from Stratford, Thabit Abdullah from York University, Mohammed Fadl from the University of Toronto, Mohammed Al-Masri, University of Waterloo Professor Emeritus. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.